Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We'll talk money matters today. First, the Canadian dollar dips below 70 cents US. What is behind it? And we'll find out what's pushing the dollar down and what that means for you. Plus, we talk holiday tips and get them from a financial planner and a travel expert. And we're asking you, what's your biggest and most stressful holiday expense? Have you changed anything to cut down on costs? Are you thrifting gifts or doing a potluck, driving instead of flying to visit family? Let us know how you're keeping Christmas cheap this year. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. It has been a chaotic start to the week. As you know, on Monday, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland announced her resignation from cabinet, from Justin Trudeau's cabinet. The federal government then unveiled a fall economic update that revealed a $61.9 billion deficit, blowing its target by more than $20 billion. And now the Canadian dollar that has been going down has now dipped below 70 cents US, the first time since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020. That's according to Bloomberg. This all comes, of course, just in time as we stride into the holiday season, or drag ourselves into the holiday season, perhaps. Asking you now on the open line, what is your biggest holiday expense? And in light of inflation, in light of the lower dollar, are you cutting costs? Are you changing anything to keep things within budget this holiday season? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining me to help explain the state of the Canadian dollar is Werner Antweiler. He's an associate professor at UBC's Sauder School of Business. Good afternoon, Werner. Nice to see you again.
Good afternoon, Michelle.
Tell us overall, what's driving the value of the Canadian dollar down?
Yeah, there are usually two sources that are influencing the value of the Canadian dollar. One is interest rates, and the other one is resource prices, in particular the price of oil. But right now, it's the interest rate differential between Canada and the United States that's really the driver, because Canada has been lowering its overnight rate faster than the United States has been lowering their federal funds rate. So we see a much more significant gap today than we see in the past, and that is weighing heavily on the Canadian dollar.
Okay, and we just saw breaking news today that the U.S. Central Bank has cut interest rates for a third time, and it was expected, but despite that cut, there is still that differential between the two countries.
Yeah, right now the overnight rate from the Bank of Canada is at 3.25%, and the federal funds rate as of yesterday was still just over 4%, and that's a gap of over 100 basis points, and that is very unusual. Usually we see a much smaller gap, and when the gap is so large in this direction, it actually means that bonds are valued differently in Canada than the United States, and that's driving down the value of the Canadian dollar. I should also mention that overall, the US dollar is actually valued quite highly compared to other currencies, not just the
Right.
US dollar. So it's really, when we compare the value of the Canadian dollar against the euro, we actually see very little movement. So the movement we see is really all against the US dollar right now.
And what's behind that?
Yeah, so in addition to the interest rate differential, there's also the perception of whenever there is turmoil in the economy, in the global economy, the US dollar is a safe haven. And even though what we're hearing out of the US for the incoming new administration, tariffs against Canada, against Mexico, against China, and others, that's all actually increasing uncertainty. And that actually means people are flocking to the US dollar as a safe haven.
Okay. And we heard that that talk from now former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, right? She was talking about that increased protectionism on the part of the the U.S. president-elect, that sort of comes, in her words, at the expense of other economies.
Yeah, so when we see these tariffs that are threatened actually being implemented, we should actually see even more pressure on the Canadian dollar, because one way how economies react in this particular instance is to actually become more competitive by devaluing the exchange rate. So that actually means our exporters can offset some of the effect of this tariff by lowering their costs through the exchange rate. So this is just something we would see happening when a tariff is imposed. Whether we see a tariff being
Right.
imposed, that is still a big question mark.
And so, what about just even the threat of tariffs and the political? Yeah, it's being called chaos in Ottawa this week. Do those things have an impact on the dollar?
Yeah, even before a tariff is imposed, people are anticipating that may happen, and so they're stockpiling things. So there's a lot of buying that may be happening in various directions. That actually means this anticipatory effect actually is already taking place. It can be seen in some of the movements.
So, what does this mean for the average Canadian, Werner?
Yeah, it depends on what your plans are. If you're traveling south for the holidays and visiting relatives in the United States, things are all going to get more expensive. And it has been actually getting more expensive for a while as the Canadian dollar has been undervalued against the US dollar for quite some time. And so everything in the US will look more expensive than here at home.
Right. And what about, okay, so I imagine there are people rethinking their plans or thinking through those plans to travel down to the US. Let us know if that's something that's on your mind, given the declining dollar and now hitting past below the 70-cent mark. You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Is the low loonie affecting your travel plans as well? Let's take a call now from B in Vancouver. Tell us about your holiday expenses. What stresses you out the most, B?
Well, I don't easily get stressed out. But,
Good for you.
I just went to Canada Post and I shipped everything that's been standing in my room for a month.
Ah.
And I published my book, and everybody who got a signed copy has been waiting for Canada Post to get back. And the expenses of shipping are pretty steep. But
Even with Canada Post, eh?
Oh yeah, I mean and that's shipping, and it should be. I do think that too much shipping is such a drain on the environment that we should minimize it as much as possible. But personalized items like a signed book, that has to be sent, of course.
Right. And so this is a special occasion for you. You've had a book published. Congratulations. And
Thank you.
You are sending out all these books right now, but your comment is on generally the cost of shipping. Do you ever do that with presents, perhaps in other years?
No, I don't do presents for that reason. I'm from the Netherlands originally, and that's where my family is. And it's either local or not because of the environment. I
Really?
think shipping and the whole Amazons and whatever is just something we really need to rethink in how much we want to use that to not put a burden on the environment. So
Okay. The environmental cost as well as the financial cost. B, thank you so much. Great to hear from you.
thank you so much.
You too. Congrats
you.
on that book. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Eric is on the line in Nanaimo now. Your reaction to the low dollar, Eric?
Hi, yes. Going to have to reschedule or rather plan a trip to Disneyland, probably more for the summer or rather when the dollar goes back up. I've been telling my daughter who sees the castle anytime we watch a Disney movie and asks to go there, that she can go there when she's tall enough. But I'm starting to think that might not be enough, and I'll have to plan it around the dollar value.
Yeah, right. They're good with that marketing, aren't they? How old is your daughter, Eric?
She just turned 4, so when she's tall enough, but she's growing pretty fast.
Tell me about that. So you had been promising her a trip to Disneyland, and you were planning for this holiday season?
I wanted to go for this holiday season,
Yeah.
but back in October, I decided to definitely step back from those plans and reschedule it maybe for next summer or for the fall, because I know it's a lot of fun during holiday season in October as well.
Yeah. Eric, thank you so much. And how'd she take the news?
She's okay. She's 4. Nothing on off her back at all.
Here's some coloring books just to distract yourself for now. Eric, great to hear from you. Thank you very much. And so there we have someone who's rethinking or rescheduling a plan for Disneyland because of the low Canadian dollar and how much that's going to bring up costs for a trip to Disneyland. Justin is up next in Nanaimo now. What are your thoughts on the low dollar, Justin?
Hi, I was just curious. When Stephen Harper was in and our dollar was at $1.10 compared to the U.S., he said, well, that's not good for business. And he put it down to like 77 cents to their dollar. So how come they can't just raise it so that it's par?
Okay, what are the
curious on
factors?
that.
What's actually within a prime minister's power when it comes to the dollar?
Yeah.
Value? Yeah. Thanks, Justin. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
What can a prime minister do in that case, Werner?
Well, actually, the prime minister can do absolutely nothing because it's a market exchange rate, and it's not prime ministers that determine the value, or not even the governor of the Bank of Canada. The only instruments that they have is the interest rate that they set, and that explains some of the movement. But when we actually saw the exchange rate at parity and even across parity, that actually was a time when oil prices were sky high, and therefore demand for the Canadian dollar was driven up by that demand for oil. So right now, the oil market isn't all that influential. Oil prices are significantly down, so we don't really see much influence from that segment of the market. But what we are seeing is, yeah, the interest rate differential is really playing out, and that's really trying to make sure our economy is humming along. Here in Canada, we're not doing quite as strongly as in the United States, and that has meant that the Bank of Canada needed to lower the interest rates a little faster than in the U.S., and that's weighing on the economy. But it's helping exporters because their products are now more competitive across the border.
Right. So there's that, who's benefiting from a lower dollar? It'd be exporters versus importers from the U.S. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, when people are buying Christmas gifts and importing from the United States, everything is going to be proportionally more expensive. So everyone who's an importer will actually pay this higher price right now, and it's quite significant. The long-term average exchange rate is roughly around 85 cents US. That's what we call purchasing power parity. Now we're at roughly 70 cents, and so that means we're about 20% undervalued compared to that purchasing power parity.
Marjorie wrote us a question by email, and you mentioned the euro not performing as strongly as the United States dollar, but she's saying, how is our dollar doing with regard to euros? And Marjorie writes, I'm never going to the US. Okay. So what about that? If you have a trip planned to somewhere in Europe?
Yeah, so the exchange rates to the euro have been quite flat for quite some time. So in fact, the euro and the Canadian dollar are moving pretty much along at the same level relative to the United States dollar. So in that sense, when we're looking at exchange rate movements, it's really the U.S. dollar that's standing out compared to not just the Canadian dollar, but also the euro, the British pound, the Japanese yen. So it's really the U.S. dollar that is moving more than the other currencies.
Okay, so there you go, Marjorie. Perhaps something to think about there. It sounds like you've made up your mind when it comes to travel to the U.S. We'll get some tips actually in a few moments from a travel writer on how you can save money, try and save some dollars if you are going to the United States. My guest, Werner Antweiler, is a professor at Sauder School of Business. And what then? We talked about small businesses importing those goods. What about the pressure this will put on those small businesses right now? What can they do to try and stabilize and withstand the decline in the dollar, Werner?
Well, it all depends how much they pay for inputs in US dollars. That is, of course, quite different across different companies. But that said, as the Canadian dollar is losing value against the US dollar, companies are looking at alternatives. So if they find it's too expensive to import goods from the US, they may look at importing it from other countries. But it's not enough of a movement quite yet for a lot of businesses to do that. At this level of undervaluation that we see, it's often still cheaper to buy from the US simply because they're much and it's much more expensive to source goods from places that are further away.
Is there anything then that the Bank of Canada can do? Because I wonder if, when making those decisions to rapidly cut interest rates, is this something that they foresee and kind of plan for, that this is going to affect the Canadian dollar? Is there anything that can be done to try and stabilize it on that front, that consequence?
No, essentially, the Bank of Canada looked at the overall state of the macroeconomy, and they're more concerned about economic growth and the particular value of the Canadian dollar, because they have to choose. If they were to manage the exchange rate, then they only focus on that, but they can't focus on economic growth. But so essentially, the main focus is always going to be on, is our economy humming along? We're looking at employment levels, we're looking at economic activity overall, and the exchange rate is basically an afterthought in that process.
It's not something that they consider. What impact could it have on the economy then in turn?
Yeah, so it impacts, of course, both importers and exporters. When the interest rate actually goes down quicker than the United States, and it actually benefits the exporters. It's actually stimulating the economy as it makes Canadian goods cheaper in the U.S. market, and that is, in that sense, intentional. It's actually meant to help stimulate the economy.
Werner, always great to speak with you. Thank you very much for this context.
You're most welcome.
That is Werner Antweiler, Associate Professor at the Sauder School of Business at UBC. It's 12:22 now. And yes, when it comes to the traveling to the United States, if you are planning to do so, we're asking you, are you rethinking that? What is your biggest expense over the holidays? Do you do anything to cut back? We'll take your calls in a moment. But right now, I did get some advice earlier today. I reached out to Barry Choi, who's a personal finance and travel writer at the website Money We Have. And I started by asking him what impact the declining Canadian dollar would have on those travel costs and how we can alleviate them.
So what I tell people is whenever they go to the U.S. or any country that doesn't take Canadian dollars, so obviously outside of Canada, is to get a credit card without foreign transaction fees. What a lot of people don't realize is that most credit cards in Canada charge you a fee of 2.5% whenever you make any purchase that's not in Canadian dollars. Most people don't realize this because it's baked right into the exchange. So even though we can't obviously affect the exchange rate between U.S. dollars and Canadian dollars, if we use a credit card without foreign transaction fees, we're guaranteeing we're saving 2.5%. So that is like a little silver lining. It helps a little bit, maybe psychologically, but obviously if you need cold hard cash, things will add up.
For sure. And I mean, I do this, right? If I'm in the United States, I'm just automatically multiplying what I see on the menu or what I see on the price tag, right?
That's exactly it. And I think it's very difficult for people who haven't gone in a little while, or even say snowbirds who haven't been back to the South in a year. Obviously, inflation is something that's affected everyone across the world. So when you go back to the U.S., you might see some higher prices at the restaurants, maybe even parking fees, resort fees. And then you add in the exchange and you're questioning, why am I here? Should I go back home a little bit earlier? That said, maybe there's an opportunity for Canadians to look at other countries or even stay at home.
And we've already been seeing the Canadian dollar going down over recent months. So have you seen that? People choosing other destinations?
I think people are just more aware and they're starting to do their research, right? So we've talked about the U.S. dollar. But what's funny is a lot of people don't realize is that the U.S. dollar is on par pretty close to on par with the euro. So it's like, okay, I can go to the U.S., it's super close, or maybe I just bite the bullet and I just go to Europe because I always plan to, because now it doesn't make that much of a difference. Obviously, airfare is a consideration. That said, a lot of people are starting to look at Asia, especially those who live in Vancouver, because there's so many direct flights from Vancouver to Asia where certain countries are significantly cheaper. So yeah, it might cost you more to fly to, say, Thailand, but your dollar will go significantly further because the cost on the ground, including hotels and food, is significantly cheaper. So I do think it makes sense for Canadians to do some additional research.
I have lost track of the number of people I know who have been to Japan lately.
Well, Japan, funny enough, they were also hit with their currency going down significantly too. So it was highly beneficial for people, regardless of where you live, to travel to Japan. And Japan's one of those countries where there's this misconception that it's really expensive. It is similar to price as Canada, but the taxes are built into the prices, and it's a no tipping culture. So when you think about it, it could easily be like a 30% discount when you think about it.
What about flights? Will this affect, will the low loonie affect the price of flights?
It comes down to supply and demand, and quite often airlines are pricing things out so in advance. What I mean is they're looking at the passenger loads from last year. So we're not going to see a direct correlation in prices right away. And I often tell people, it's like, don't obsess over airfare, right? You know, in my younger days, I would spend 10 hours trying to save $100 in airfare, searching nonstop. But it's like I valued my own time at $10 an hour. Like I couldn't find anything else to save money, to save that $100, you know, eating out less or, you know, working some overtime. So to me, trying to get the lowest airfare doesn't really matter. They're just easier ways to save money.
Okay. And as you say, there are still the costs that you would incur when you're there. What's your advice? You said earlier, perhaps think of staying home, think of other places. Is that what people should kind of be thinking about right now then with the dollar so low?
I would say, again, it comes down to your research. You know, even though we don't have to worry about currency exchange when staying within Canada, flying across the country is expensive. Hotels in major cities in Canada can be very expensive, but if you're able to drive across the border to the U.S., maybe there are some options nearby. A lot of people also talk about dupe cities or B cities. So instead of going to Los Angeles, maybe you're going to Irvine, which is maybe 45 minutes away, that offers similar attractions or different attractions, but their overall cost might be a little bit lower. So, yeah, it sucks that the Canadian dollar is weak, but I think it's an opportunity for Canadians to just do their research and see what else is available instead of defaulting to those destinations that we're so used to.
Okay. And look at your credit card too, as you said.
Definitely look at your credit card. Having one of those no foreign transaction fee credit cards is always useful.
Great tip. Barry, thank you so much. Happy holidays to you.
No problem. Happy holidays.
That's travel writer Barry Choi. Well, Canada Post employees are back at work after an order from the Canada Industrial Relations Board. Last week, Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon asked the board to intervene. Well, we asked you on the show, is the strength of labor unions at risk? Dwayne writes from Victoria, I've never been a member of a union. I grew up poor and my first job was volunteering at Woolworths, then working as an assistant mechanic in a garage before joining the military. So many of my union friends in the lumber industry have let the unions destroy their jobs and put the companies out of business. In my opinion, the unions have a place when it comes to safety and working conditions. They've done a great job getting the government to improve working laws and safety. However, when unions such as Canada Post make irrational demands for massive pay increases when the company is losing hundreds of millions and refuse to work with the company to improve profitability, then I have no sympathy for them. Donna writes, there's no compelling reason Canada Post has been set up with a capitalist corporate structure. Postal service is a service. Postal workers should run the post office, not an appointed executive, so the interests of Canada Post and its workers are harmonized. The corporation has failed Canadians. Change it. And Cheryl writes, during the decade of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher in the late 1970s and early 80s, they cut taxes of the richest citizens, reined in trade unions, and cut social welfare spending. What arose has been termed the Washington Consensus. And after that, unions were targeted, and globalization and the rise of technology have reduced their strength. Bottom line, I disagree with the Canada Post workers being forced back to work by government. Thank you so much for all of your emails. Lots of different opinions there. You can always send us your thoughts, bctoday@cbc.ca. You're with BC Today here on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming as well on CBC News BC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Very nice to be with you this Wednesday afternoon. We made it to hump day, everybody. Coming up in our next half hour, we are going to keep taking your calls on holiday spending and budgeting, asking you what is your biggest holiday expense. And given inflation and given the low dollar, as we've been talking about, have you been changing anything this year to cut your costs? We'll take more of your calls and we'll speak with a financial advisor as well. That's all coming up after this CBC News Update with Michelle Morton.
Good afternoon. Here are the headlines from the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Police in New Westminster are investigating after a pedestrian was hit by a vehicle this morning on McBride Boulevard. They say the area between 6th Avenue and Memorial Drive will remain closed to traffic for several hours. Police say the driver remained at the scene, but all contributing factors have not yet been ruled out. The Metro Vancouver population is projected to grow to 4 million people by 2050. The growth numbers are part of the regional district's process to plan for housing, utilities, jobs, transit, and other areas to maintain quality of life in the region. The district says the population is expected to increase by 50,000 people a year, well above the average of 35,000. It says most people coming will be from outside Canada, while the natural population recedes as deaths outpace births. Governor General Mary Simon has announced this year's recipients of the Order of Canada. Among the 88 Canadians being honored is Vancouver's Ryan Reynolds. Reynolds has been named an officer of the Order of Canada. The Order of Canada showcases Canadians who have made contributions to their communities and inspire others. Established in 1967, the Order of Canada has been given to more than 8,000 Canadians. In the local forecast by Environment Canada, today a mix of sun and clouds, highs of 11, and tonight partly cloudy with a low of 5, and periods of rain for tomorrow, highs of 10. Now back to BC Today with Michelle Elliott.
And congratulations to everybody, including Ryan Reynolds, who just needed one more, right? One more thing. That was going great. I also just did a quick Google of him, and he has done a Christmas song or Christmas music.
Oh,
so
are you going to sing it
add
for
that
us?
to the thing? Well, no, I was just thinking about all the kind of Christmas covers, Christmas music covers that celebrities do, and sometimes they're kind of random. I don't know if you've come across that before. Like Jimmy Fallon has a song right now, a Christmas song, and it's doing very well. So I don't know if you have a favorite, if anything comes to mind.
Like a favorite Christmas song?
Yeah, maybe a Christmas song. And yeah, yes, you do. I can see the nodding.
I do. Classic Mariah Carey.
Of course.
And Justin Bieber has some good ones too that I really enjoy. Under the Mistletoe, is
That's
that
a good
the one?
one.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It just like makes you want to snap.
It's like the Christmas version of Baby. That's
exactly, which is also great.
Yes, Mariah Carey, classic. Anytime I hear that, I'm in the Christmas mood. Yesterday, I was listening to something or the radio, and I heard an Air Supply Christmas song.
Oh.
Which was weird and strange. It didn't sound at all like the Air Supply of the 80s that I remember. So I'm just saying, every time I turn around, it seems like everyone's done some kind of Christmas take.
Totally. Which one's your favorite?
Like, it's got to be any version of Mariah Carey.
Right.
My favorite Christmas song is by Stevie Wonder. Christmas, This Christmas.
Oh, again,
Yes.
another good song.
Yeah, and it's great. It's been covered many times. Nothing like the original, though. I have to
Just
say.
like the holiday movies, the Christmas songs, just it doesn't matter how many times you hear them, they just
Got to go back to the OG.
You do. There's nothing better than even just blasting the
Thanks,
songs and
Michelle.
rapping.
Thanks for joining us on BC Today. We're live on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming as well. You can catch us on CBC News BC as well as on YouTube. Just search for CBC British Columbia. Thanks for watching us there too. I'm Michelle Elliott. Very nice to be with you this afternoon. Well, we have been talking about holiday budgeting and asking you, what is your biggest holiday expense? Are you doing anything different to cut down on your costs this year? Maybe you're doing Thriftmas instead of Christmas, arranging a price limit on gifts. Yeah, good luck with that conversation. Doing a potluck or cutting back on travel. Let us know how you're cutting down on your holiday costs. Our numbers are 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone as well, or email bctoday@cbc.ca. Let me just quickly go to Wendy because Wendy has been waiting a while to get on the air. Hi there. Hi, Wendy. Are you there? I think Wendy may have gone, but
Hello?
Hi, Wendy. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hi,
Yes.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. How was your Christmas spending going?
Well, one thing I noticed this year in particular was the cost of food. We are parents and grandparents, and we host the family meal.
Yeah.
And 2 weekends ago, I had my granddaughter here, and we were doing Christmas baking. And I would say that it cost twice as much this year as last year because, of course, when you're making shortbread and gingerbread and all those great things, there's a lot of butter, eggs, dairy products. And I was actually quite surprised. It would probably have been cheaper for us just to go buy store-bought stuff, but that's just not what we do.
Right, because the experience is priceless.
Absolutely.
Oh, Wendy, so what impact is that having on you then? I mean, you're right. Food has been such a source of the increased costs this year.
You know, for us, it's not going to change any of our traditions, of which we have many in our family. You know, we just had to dip into our savings a little bit to make sure that our Christmas this year is as great as all the other Christmases.
Okay. And do you have a plan for that? Like, did that hurt a little bit to have to dip into your savings?
We're retired, so you know, obviously it's going to hurt a little bit, but you know, just for us having the family all together and enjoying each other means more than anything.
Oh, wonderful. Well, you have a wonderful Christmas dinner and enjoy all the baking that you've got.
All right. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. That's Wendy in Nanaimo. Let us know, too, what is the biggest cost this year for you? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. And you can also hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Well, joining me now is Xin Lou, who is a financial planner with Coast Capital. And Xin has been good enough to join me in studio. Hello.
Hi, Michelle.
Very nice to have you. I saw you nodding there when Wendy was talking about the cost of food. I mean, how bad has it been?
Yeah, I think for a lot of types of groceries, the cost has gone up quite substantially. And to Wendy's point, it makes a lot of sense when you are preparing the full meal, especially for a large family gathering. It can be very costly that way. I know for many of our parties, we've elected to do potlucks this year as a way to kind of reduce those costs for each of us.
Absolutely. And what else is kind of on people's minds this year as they get ready for the holiday season and the spending that's associated with it?
Right. I think it's very important to understand how much this does impact people in terms of their finances. About 79% of individuals, and this is statistics from a survey that Coast Capital had commissioned in partnership with the Angus Reid Forum, 79% of respondents didn't have a budget prepared for the holidays in particular. Wow. Over half of those, about 60%, are going to spend just as much as they did last year, and about 16% are going to spend even more.
How do you reconcile that with the fact that the cost of living has been one of the biggest concerns over this year?
Well, absolutely. Cost of living has gone up, but to Wendy's point, that doesn't change the tradition that's been set in the household for many years and if not decades, right? And we want to celebrate. It's the end of the year. We've all had a long one. And so this is the time for us to get together to celebrate and be generous.
Bake those cookies. Pedro writes exactly that. First, no change to our Christmas budget. I'm going to have a wonderful time. Yes, thank you very much, Pedro. Glad to hear it. That's a really interesting point. So how much are people willing to change when it comes to, big events and significant holidays? Maybe they're cutting back elsewhere.
Perhaps. I think the gift giving and just having all the fixins for dinner is always going to be there, right? We feel this expectation to live up to the holiday spirit and give generously.
Well, I'm going to ask you for some advice on that.
Of course.
And how we can try and manage that so we don't have the sticker shock come January. Let's take a call now. My guest, Xin Lou, financial planner with Coast Capital, asking you, are you cutting back on anything this year to try and stick to a holiday budget, or is this the time of year where you're saying, I have saved all year and I'm going to stick to my traditions? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Basil is calling from Port Coquitlam. Hi, Basil, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. It is Michelle, I hope, and have a Merry Christmas. And to your guest, Stephen, was it?
Xin, yes. And it is
Xin,
Michelle
okay.
today. Yes, thank you, Basil.
Yeah, oh, great. And yeah, I'm just thinking how to get special treats for Christmas. What can I cut back on in other ways? And you know what? The best way, heat is very expensive, especially at Christmas time when it's getting colder. And how can we cut back on our heat so we can get special treats for Christmas instead? And you know what? Let's wear toques inside the house if we're cold. Let's wear warm winter coats and jackets and sweaters and extra socks. Let's put gloves on our hands and a blanket wrapped around the blanket. You can be very comfy watching TV or listening to CBC if you dress well inside, and then you can turn the heat way down at 15 degrees and be quite comfortable and save all kinds of money for special Christmas treats.
There you go. And in Port Coquitlam, not too bad. You're not up north, Basil. And now, is there a special treat that you look forward to and you're thinking, I am going to get that this year regardless?
Yes, dancing to Christmas music.
Well, that doesn't cost very much, so that works out for you.
Right.
Basil, you've called in before to talk about dancing, and I always enjoy it. It's a treat for me. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. And you have a good Christmas there at CBC, and thanks for all the good work you do for everyone.
Thank you very much. And happy holidays and Merry Christmas to you as well. Sal is on the line from Abbotsford to talk about how to save money while still getting your bacon going. Hi, Sal.
Hi, Michelle.
Thank you very much for calling. You want to talk about ways to scrimp and save in the kitchen?
Well, what I've done is whenever I see butter on sale in the past few months, I pick up one or two, throw it in the freezer. Anything that I'm baking with, if it's on sale, I buy it and I either put it in the freezer or I put it aside so that when Christmas comes around and I have to do my mega baking, because that's what I do for gifts, is I do shortbread and butter tarts.
Oh, lovely.
So I buy what I can before Christmas, so it's not as hard a hit when I have to pick up the last few things.
Oh, isn't that smart?
Yeah.
How many butter tarts?
At one point, I had 8 pounds of butter in my freezer.
Oh my goodness.
I'm down to the last 2.
Yeah, exactly. No meats or anything like that, but lots of butter.
Yeah.
And so how much baking do you do then over the holidays?
Well, this year I did, I'd say about 400 shortbread cookies.
Oh my goodness.
And I've got to do at least 72 butter tarts on Sunday.
Oh, wow. And do you have enough butter to take you through that?
I think so. Yeah. I've got 3 pounds, so I think I got enough. All I have to do is get more flour because I know I'm going to run out of that, having to make, 3 batches of pastry.
Sal,
I don't cheat. Everything is from scratch.
Wow. Okay, there's the effort. I think that's a great way to look at it too, is making those gifts that can help you with the cost, but also helps you put a lot more love into your gifts. Thank you so much, Sal.
Oh yeah, and they all look forward to it. They're all waiting for it.
I bet they are. I would be. Butter tarts, yum. Thanks for the call. Take care. Xin, so there's that's a great tip, buying beforehand. I know people who have done that with presents as well, kind of buying through the year so that it's not one big expense. But what is your advice for setting up a holiday budget?
That's a great question. I like to start from the top down and really set the mindset that your holiday spending is just one small portion of your larger financial goals. And so thinking beyond December is a really important thing, where you got to keep in mind it's important for us to celebrate and be generous this season, but you've still got your financial goals to start off in 2025. Absolutely. And so for those individuals who have long-term goals in mind, have already taken the steps towards that, it's it's a natural conclusion to set a holiday budget so that they can make sure their other financial goals are also going to be on track starting 2025.
Okay, so start with a big picture, add the holiday expenses under that, and then what? How do you break that down then?
That's a good question. So a lot of people I know, we purchase online because it's so much more convenient. If you have a particular holiday budget and you really want to take steps to try to stay within it, do consider cash. That's one good way where if you take out the amount of cash that you've allotted for your holiday budget, you can make your purchases that way. And once you run out of cash, it's kind of your cue to say, oh, hey, I'm at my limit. And perhaps you can prevent yourself from going over too much.
Right. What are some aspects of Christmas festivities do you think that people can really cut back on?
That's a great question. So we talked about having those potluck dinners and whatnot previously. So I know for a lot of my friends and families, we are doing that not only for the cost savings, but there have been a few individuals who have just been really excited to participate and contribute to the dinner. Sometimes you go, well, your dishes are a little bit innovative, let's say. So it can be interesting during holidays. In the nicest possible way. But that's one great way to do it. And then another one is just to take part in Secret Santas. I mean, be proud of your budget for the holidays. Make it clear to your family and friends. Who knows? Your peer group might be feeling the same type of pressures regarding holiday spending, and they might be really grateful that you brought up the Secret Santa.
Right. Yeah. So be prepared for that conversation, though. It could go one of two ways. They could call you innovative. And you don't want to have that conversation. Let's see. Let's take a call now from Sonia in Vancouver. Hi, Sonia.
Hi, how are you, Michelle?
I am doing just fine. Do you want to tell us about how you approach your holiday budget?
Well, one of my biggest expenses is gift giving, which I love to do. And the way I'm cutting costs is getting more local quality gifts. I myself am a local vendor, founder of Delicious. So I have access to all these wonderful local markets we have in our city.
Nice.
And so instead of ordering online, paying for shipping, often getting items that people don't need, I myself, I don't know how many scarves I own just from getting gifts. And this way, I especially love gifting food. So grabbing, a local made jam from a local vendor at one of the markets. The markets also have such a great vibe. So,
so true.
Your guest there was, like the guest there was mentioning, bringing cash with you and kind of controlling your spending that way rather than sometimes, with our credit card or ordering online, we don't have that kind of visibility or control as just bringing cash to a fun market and supporting your local economy as well.
And which market are you at, Sonia?
I'm actually on my way to the downtown farmers market at Robson Square at the moment.
Oh, fantastic.
We'll be there from 2 to 6 p.m.,
I love Robson Square.
It's lovely, and as I said, there's wonderful local vendors from, cider to cheeses to, jams. I myself have homemade artisanal ghee from Delicious, my company. And I also have found that people appreciate those kind of food products that they can consume and use. And it's not something, a clothing item or a trinket that's going to kind of sit in the cupboard, or get gifted eventually or given away. So yeah.
Ironically, I did get a scarf from the market at Robson Square, and I love it. But Sonia, let's talk about the cost of food because it's come up several times already. For yourself as a food vendor, have you found that your own costs have gone up too?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the callers earlier was mentioning shortbread and, the cost of butter. I make homemade artisanal ghee, and certainly the cost is a lot higher these days for sure. Where my approach is I've sort of gone more quality, and I find when you are getting quality items, they often stretch further. But definitely, I think those are the sign of the times with food costing a lot. for me, I really appreciate, supporting my local farmers. And honestly, I find the cost is pretty much the same to shop at a farmer's market as it is at a grocery store.
Okay.
And often the quality of the items is fresh.
Yeah.
It's a lot better than in the store. Yeah.
Well, you have made the case. You have made the case, and enjoy heading over to Robson Square this afternoon. Thanks, Sonia.
It's a beautiful day, so
Take
come
care.
on down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. That's Sonia in Vancouver. Michael wrote us from Nelson. Stop buying stuff, shop local, and use cash, as you had said earlier, Shane. I wonder if, we heard from someone who, Wendy is a grandmother and a mother, and so there are different generations there. Perhaps we can go through different generations just for some specific advice that you would have. And let's start with, younger generations who may be starting out in their careers and are planning for their own holidays or visiting family. What can they do to keep their costs down this holiday season?
That's a good question. I think it can be difficult, especially if you have to travel for the holidays.
Right.
Those costs are definitely going to increase. Thinking ahead of time, so like that individual who had stored up all the butter, if you can prepare for those travel plans earlier ahead of time, or even during Black Friday sales or whatnot, it's a fantastic time to do so. Other than that, it's really coming down to having open communication, especially for young individuals. So through that survey, we found that 72% of people are going to feel increased pressure for their expenditures due to the holiday season. And over half of those are going to continue to spend just as much. It particularly impacts those between ages of 18 and 34. So like you said, if you are in the beginning stages of your career and you're not making that much income, what can you do? Well, be loud and proud of your budgeting again and share it with your peer group and family. They may be feeling the same type of pinches, and that secret Santa and potluck dinner might really just be the way to go. Again, we got to remember, it's not really about what gift you get. It's about spending time. It's spending quality time with our loved ones. So.
Absolutely. And, you touched on loud budgeting, which has kind of become an online thing, right? To be loud and proud about budgeting. Is that something that people are embracing in that age group?
Yeah, especially younger generations, I believe. We talked about this earlier in the year in terms of under consumption core and loud budgeting being popular trends that were on TikTok. And I'm really happy to see this because we are swinging the pendulum the other way. Instead of feeling this need to upshow everybody else and kind of prove how happy we are, true happiness comes from us being responsible to ourselves, being respectful of our financial goals. And I think in the long run, young individuals, if they follow that prudence, they're going to be a lot more happier.
Wow. And what about then the people who are mid-career, who are perhaps, paying mortgages or are hoping to buy a home? What can they do as they try and prove their happiness this season?
Well, I think those are big goals to have if you're looking to purchase your first home and whatnot. We've got fantastic programs like your FHSA and other accounts like TFSAs that those individuals who have more savings can utilize to really invest for the longer term and make sure they can hit those goals. And I'm sure they're feeling pinches the same way in terms of their holiday spending, right? So it goes back to that same budgeting. I like the being creative idea. Right? Spending locally and picking up something that is a unique experience, perhaps. It doesn't have to cost a lot for you to enjoy it. And I love the local farmers market. That's a great way to find something where not available at your everyday, shoppers, Save On or whatnot, right? So very unique, very customized and personalized.
And what do you do in your own family? What do you do for the holidays?
Well, I was just talking about this actually before coming on the air here. We do have long lists, for Christmas for the kids. But what I've found as a great way or an alternative to some of the expensive items on there is group activities and things that we can make together. So there's lots of these types of puzzles and interactive things that I can do with my kids, right? So I buy them, we build them together, and we're spending more time, and then they can play with that themselves. And let's be honest, a lot of the toys that they get usually goes in the bin after a couple of months anyway. So this is a great way for me to save on a particular item and spend more time with them when they're enjoying that toy.
Because again, as we heard, and we started off this way, right? Time is priceless. The time that you spend together. And your kids are okay with that, shortening the list?
They seem to be happy so far. I'll let you know when they complain.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you so much for coming in. Very happy holidays to you.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That is Xin Lou, who's a financial planner at Coast Capital. Thank you so much for all of your emails and your calls on that holiday budgeting. Lots of good tips that we got this hour as well. 12:55 now Pacific time. You're with BC Today. And we have a really heartwarming story for you from Barkerville, because 6 months ago, the historic town was nearly destroyed by wildfire. And you know, the town is dotted with heritage buildings and 19th century displays that reflect that history as a center of caribou, the caribou gold rush. Well, now it's bustling once again, and Barkerville is actually full of holiday cheer right now. More than 1,300 people from around the province visited last weekend, and they took part in the historic town and park's old-fashioned Christmas. And this is a lovely story. CBC's Hannah Peterson took us to that event.
Troll the ancient Yuletide carol, fa la 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 la.
5 months ago, the Antler Creek wildfire threatened to burn Barkerville to the ground. The fire burned just 3 kilometers south of the historic Caribou Gold Rush town. With the memory of the fire fresh in mind, the community has rallied to put on their annual Christmas celebration.
We're very grateful. It's a special Christmas for us because, as I said, we weren't sure if this place was going to survive.
Stuart Kaywood is the manager of public programming. He helped ready the town to welcome hundreds of tourists for caroling, sleigh rides, and visits with Father Christmas.
It's more than just a livelihood for us out here. We're here because we love Barkerville and we love sharing the history of British Columbia with people. And we were scared that we might lose all of that.
Danette Boucher is an actor who plays the role of Mrs. Florence Wilson. She's worked at Barkerville since the mid-1990s and says the memory of the wildfire makes every moment in Barkerville more precious.
And these buildings are made of wood, and the threat of wildfire seems to get more and more intense every single year.
Kaywood says he's grateful for all the work that went into protecting Barkerville this summer. He hopes the town will continue to welcome Christmas visitors for years to come.
It's just such a wonderful place to visit. The town itself, so historical, and the Christmas celebration is really nothing like it.
And God bless you and send you a happy new year. And God send you a happy new year.
Hannah Peterson, CBC News, Prince George.
Oh, so nice to see the snowflakes falling in Barkerville. Great that they had that wonderful Christmas celebration. And that is it for us today. I'm Michelle Elliott. I will be off tomorrow, and the fabulous Amy Bell will be sitting in this host chair. Thanks so much for being with us.